Okay, webinar has started. Hello, everyone. I see the participation numbers going up. Thank you for joining. Wonderful. And Jocelyn Kaza, who's our marketing person, I'll be calling out for her on a couple of occasions here. Jocelyn, thanks for making this all possible.
Of course. Thanks everyone for being here today.
Do you know if everybody has access to the chat and the Q&A?
Oh yeah, let me hold on here.
Wonderful.
So yes, everyone should have access. Everyone has access to the Q&A and access to the chat now
Love
as well.
that. Excellent, Jocelyn. Thank you so much. I'll introduce the panelists in just a moment, or in fact, I'll allow them to introduce themselves. But can we just take a moment as folks are logging in? If you have the opportunity to, I'd love for you to even introduce yourself, announce yourself, where you're coming from, where you're joining from, whether it's the organization, how beautiful the weather may be where you're at, so that I could feel a little jealous. I'd love to say a quick hello to y'all as you're joining the session. And Jocelyn, you mentioned that there were this is quite a global group that's going to be joining us, right?
Yes, yeah. I saw people registered from probably 15 different countries. So love to see that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Hey, Dusty, good seeing you. Dusty's from Sylvester over in Utah. Janice Chutter from Vancouver. It's good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Cambria over in Dallas, we just spoke yesterday. Thank you for joining. Lynn from South Africa. We've got Nashina from Toronto, which is one of my favorite cities. Hey there. Providence, such a charming place, Kirsten. Thank you for joining. I love it. I love seeing this kind of activity. Suzanne from Assertitude, saw you a couple of weeks ago, and it had been years before then. So, Suzanne, thanks for joining us here. And we have Dutchland being represented. Elizabeth, hey. All right, David from Hungary. Hey, everyone. It's lovely seeing how international the group is. And it really speaks to this global pressure that executive search firms happen to be facing today, right? That's why y'all are joining the session. You are having conversations with your clients who are looking for you to deliver more quickly, who are looking for you to deliver at the same high quality that you've always delivered as well. And as you have macroeconomic trends to navigate, you're also navigating geopolitical dynamics. You're also navigating this small thing called AI and all the innovations that's happening in technology. And so what are we doing here today? Today, I have assembled a list of panelists who I find truly inspirational, and they're experts in their field to talk about some of the paths that other executive search firms or search firms that they work with have taken in order to deliver just that faster time to completion, doing it with the same high quality, making sure that there are no mess ups along the way, and regardless of where that mess up could potentially be along in the process. So I'm going to give a moment for everybody to introduce themselves. But I am quite excited for this conversation. I told the panelists that we have a list of questions. If we get to the questions that we're prepared, great. If we don't, because we're fielding the questions that you in the audience happen to have, that's awesome as well. So I invite everyone in this call, please utilize the chat box, please utilize the Q&A, ask the questions that you wish, make the commentary that you wish, treat this like your internal Twitter/X feed, right? Yes, let's use that for now. So you can go ahead, make your comments, ask your questions, and happy to field those. So without further ado, why don't I allow the panelists to introduce themselves, because they're the ones who are bringing the true fire and will give you the insight that y'all are looking for. So Alex, why don't we start with you?
Awesome. Well, yeah, excited to be on with everyone. more than 2 decades in AI neural networks, machine learning, did some early research on mine detection robots, the DARPA-funded project, and then journey led to a machine learning startup called Mtel, which was in the IoT space, which exited 2016, and just got excited about this explosion of information about human capital and the opportunities to really unlock human capital for a variety of innovative applications. And our company is exclusively focused on executive search at Hello Sky, so we call it Precision Talent Intelligence, and look forward to diving in today.
Awesome, Alex. Thank you. Adrian? Adrian, you're on mute.
Someone was going to be on mute at some point, weren't they?
There has to happen at some point.
Absolutely inevitable. Yeah, thanks, Ash. I'm Adrian from Kaya.ai. You can most easily think about Kaya as being like ChatGPT for executive search. Kaya helps firms, including many Invenius customers, like everything from small boutiques through to global firms like Boyden and Amrop, with repetitive tasks like sourcing candidates, building repetitive documents like candidate profiles, is linked into Invenius so that it can search Invenius, and we give Kaya access to Word, Excel, and Google to do research on the web. Great to be here. Looking forward to a great conversation.
Wonderful. Thank you, Adrian. Ben?
Thanks, Ashton. I think the only one who's bringing the fire this morning is you in that white blazer. I didn't know we were showing up with the fresh style today. I would have dusted off my nice jacket, knowing that that's how you were showing up this morning. That's my.
Can I interrupt your intro for a moment? So I have this blazer hanging up in one of the settings that I use to do video calls. And Ben, you had actually flagged that you wore something similar, although much better quality. You wore something similar for your wedding, right?
That's right.
Yeah. I promise you this is not a wedding suit, all right?
That's awesome. Funnily enough, my pocket square is the exact same color. But hey, that's not a webinar about your jacket. I'm Ben Monis. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Fama. We're specialists in shortlist due diligence. In simple terms, what we do is help make sure that there's no racist tweet, unknown litigation, crazy Google result, adverse news article out there about one of your executives that you're recommending on a shortlist to your client. So in other words, making sure that you never have to trigger a redo clause because it's something that went unknown in a digital background with your executives that you want to place. And yeah, looking forward to talking about more than suits today. So thanks a lot for having me.
Awesome. And MJ, Mark, over to you.
Thanks, Ashton. Quite an impressive panel, so thanks for having me. I'm Mark Jacobson. I'm the GM of Exec Search here at Findem. We are an AI-powered talent intelligence platform. We serve Fortune 500 companies. We serve growth stage expansion companies, both PE/C-backed. And we not only have an exec search division, but also a partnerships division where we're powering kind of significant players in the SMB space. So really unique company. It's a privilege to be here. I spent more than 20 years of my career as a practitioner doing executive search. I co-founded a venture capital company called Signalfire as part of a passion project for where data meets industry transformation, and it's been some time in the workforce analytics space prior to here. So I think this is a culmination of everything that I've done that I'm interested in. So great to be here on this panel. Appreciate you having me.
Thank you for being here. I want to dive right into it, and in particular, we have been talking about the pressures that search firms are feeling, and I like to give it a name. Like if you had to define what's really one thing from your point of view, like that's really driving that urgency, and how are search firms evolving to meet it? I'd love to get your insight. Ben, I'd like to start with you, and then everyone else, you can just come as the opportunity opens up.
Yeah, I think one, like many things in the world of search and, leadership advisory stems from client pressure. The perspective and the toolkit that clients now have access to and the technology, that they have access to has dramatically evolved. I think what we're seeing from our perspective, and I'll sort of limit, my world to, that of executive due diligence, because that's really where, we focus, blending AI and investigators into a single workflow to find anything and everything about an exec. We're seeing that our clients, their clients, the folks on the search team that are helping work a search, are now more equipped than ever before with new types of technology, particularly AI, that's enabling them to find more information about the candidates than they ever had thought previously, right? And so in the old days, when you used to have to get an executive's resume and look up all these Boolean search string results about, their different history at different employers, et cetera, maybe get a LexisNexis subscription, look through there, look through Twitter on their own. Now, what we're seeing a lot of these search client teams doing is, spinning up ChatGPT or whatever, LLM of your choice with some creative prompting, dropping a resume and saying, hey, find any adverse news about this person that could exist, because we're considering them for this really important position, right? And so what we're seeing now, I think, is this kind of game of cat and mouse between the client search firms that we work with and their adoption of new technology, and the search firms then requirement to level up their game and say, hey, if our clients are more adept, if they're more technologically capable, how do we not just level the playing field, but get a step ahead? And I think that's where a lot of technology investment and executive search is coming from these days, is trying to help search firms, which the value prop again is the access to talent, the right person at the right time, the leadership advisory that goes with that. Trying to find ways to stay one step ahead of your clients has never been more difficult, I think, than ever before. And that, I think, is one, clear source of pressure here.
I'll jump in. I always think most people that I've spoken to, when they have their first experience as a client of an exec search firm, their mind's slightly blown at the kind of the depth and therefore the length of the process. And I have a feeling that what's happening is, as people's expectations as to how quickly things can be achieved through technology in so many different areas, that expectation is then being imprinted on exec search. So I think it's kind of beholden on all firms out there, whether it's the smallest boutique to one of the global firms, to kind of really think about what in the process can be got out of the way. So either the process can be deeper and richer and more considered, so more time gets to get spent on the high quality stuff that only humans can do, or that you get to an outcome faster through the process of that. And what I've sort of experienced since starting Kaya, my first experience of working with exec search firms as peers and customers, as opposed to being a client of theirs, is that there's so much that sits underneath the covers of exec search, which is really important, but is really slow, somewhat manual, somewhat difficult for humans to do well on a repetitive basis. That there's this enormous opportunity to remove a load of that, give it to AI or automation of some kind, and kind of use that as the opportunity to make the whole process both richer as well as faster as well.
Yeah, maybe I'll add on to that theme. I think exec search firms are under more pressure than ever. Executive search is the high stakes. Placing an exec can literally mean success or failure for the company that's doing the hiring. So it's, very high stakes, intense pressure to fill quickly, but also with the right person that's going to grow that company. And so we are seeing, corporate clients adopting these tools. And so it's causing exec search firms to feel pressure to really level up. I think, for example, the calibration phase, to have very quantitative results, as opposed to just, hey, here's a short list of 10 people. Alex is a great guy. Now they much higher expectations and demands, and while at the same time, high expectations on quality and fit. So it's definitely increasing the pressure. And I think, firms leaning into that adoption are going to ride that wave, like a lot of these things. But the other pressure we're seeing is, if they deliver a short list and they miss an A+ candidate and the client goes and finds that themselves, we've had firms tell us that keeps them up at night. They're like, okay, there's literally only 9 people in the world. Oh, really? Because I just found this 10th one. So, I think firms are really having to level up in their sourcing process to meet that that expectation.
I think these are all great trends. We see the same thing. I think there's I would bucket them into a couple of areas, maybe just to kind of pare it back. But I think the technology innovation is one. I think there's kind of an operational discipline challenge. I think there's a financial challenge. And I think it all kind of rolls up into like a transformation statement of like, we kind of hit a evolutionary change, like moment of change when AI was introduced a few years ago. And so I think there was a lot of kind of early interest in like, what is AI and how do you use it? I think there's been a lot of fear. So even in the last like 6, 12 months, I think there's been a noticeable shift of firms maybe or maybe not being comfortable even talking about AI, internally, let alone externally, and then figuring out how do you actually learn AI, how do you adopt it, and that to me, where we spend a lot of time thinking is on the change management side. How do you actually transform your organization? What does it mean? And what does it lead to? Our point of view is not necessarily more tools are better. I think the ones that are represented here are all excellent. But I think there needs to be a point of view of like, what do the tools mean for your organization and how do you navigate change? And so we spend a lot of time thinking about insights and delivery, and what that means as well for our industry.
Yeah, I love that idea of navigating change, and there's also I know that there's a complementary views on speed, on upfront clarity and alignment. There's I want to talk about the tempo increase and about the change of pace, right? And we've had a few moments throughout history where that's really been I'd say impacted and influenced by like just technological advancements. I remember, for example, there was a time when search firms would steer clear of LinkedIn because they said, an executive would never ever utilize LinkedIn. That changed, right? And it changed quite rapidly in the grand scheme of things. I also remember, and I probably said this in a previous webinar, but like, I also remember the advent of the iPhone, right? And everybody was on their Blackberries, and it was like, hey, we're never gonna. iPhone is so, it's like that's like a toy. It's entertainment. Like we're not
You're
gonna
never
use it for
that old,
business.
Ash. You're not that
Like
old.
yeah, I remember at my wedding, there were like two people with iPhones, and everybody like that had probably just as much attention as like my wedding. And as beautiful as my wife, her dress and how she looked and everything, but that was the thing. And again, there was, with that came a different mindset, a different expectation from customers that like, hey, these folks are going to be responsive because they're on this device all the time, just like the leader of a business, happen to be. Same thing is happening with AI. So I'm really curious, like in each one of those positions or each one of those places, like there's been I'd say a shift, an evolution in what quality means, right? And the outcomes that that a search firm looking to deliver, which is a great candidate, that's part of it. But it feels like there may be more in talking about like success as a search firm. So I'm really curious, because each one of y'all are working with customers in a slightly different way, with some overlap, of course, but with a different angle. Like, in what ways are you seeing the search firms really rethink what a successful outcome looks like, and where are you seeing that that shift in I'll put this in air quotes, in quality and value?
That's an interesting one. I think I'd say we've seen some firms increasing their retention guarantees. That's kind of at the far end of the performance guarantee almost on delivering executive. So I think that ties into fit and quality of outcome. Typically, at least 1 year tenure is going to be a success criteria, but we're seeing some increase that almost like guarantee. And yeah, I just think at the calibration phase, as we talked earlier, really getting quantitative about, is this the right shortlist before you move into interviews. You see some really complex searches take 6 months or more, right? So those are the hard ones that you have to make sure you're really mapping the entire candidate pool accurately so that you can go in at the assessment phase.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I'll build on that. We're hearing from our customer's customer that their expectations are elevating. So quality, I think it's always tough when like your client has the one candidate that you didn't, and you spent 2 months, 3 months, 4 months trying to find that person. Um, but I don't know that's the only measure. I think there's kind of a level of expectation of the quality that you deliver in search. I think it's the way you, from the point that you win the search, from the point, from the information that you bring in to the search strategy definition, to the way that you walk through market development, the way you present information on the findings. I think I mean, in the 25 years that I've been in search, I think everyone's aspired to kind of like do the art and science, to be the McKinsey of our industry. And I don't think that that's like a data wrangling problem.
Mm,
Information has always been difficult to get to, and I think LinkedIn kind of was a bit of a common denominator. But when data is commonly available, I think it elevates expectations of what can you do with that information. And so how you apply that, how you deliver that, and what that means, I think is an incredible opportunity for our industry to go above and beyond. And that's not to minimize any part of the search, but I think kind of there's more that can be done if you can free up time to spend time thinking about that and presenting it in the right way. So I think that's where we see kind of firms leading and going at this point in the market.
Yeah, and I'll sort of take a not contrarian point of view here, but I think, from a technology perspective, it's never been easier for an executive to appear qualified, not quality, right? But the idea of a qualified executive for a particular position that you can extract, visualize, and illustrate through data. There are so many tools and technology out there that I think, Mark, to your point, offer more of like a data-driven leveling of the playing field to a degree, right? There's so much insight, so many tools that are out there that in a way, it's almost brought back the original foundations of what made search companies succeed, which are the relationships, right? We've seen
mm,
so much nuance in the way that searches are run when we've tried to run predictive analyses and insights on, using so much publicly available information, data that we have access to, data that might sit in the, CRM of the search firm that we're working with. And you run into scenarios where you're like, yeah, well, this candidate was actually introduced in the process because we wanted him to be the low watermark because she's the one that we really want them to pick, right? We wanted to use this candidate from a comparative perspective. So there are all these sort of very, idiosyncratic and nuanced elements of how searches are run that I think in a world where data is everywhere and AI software eats the world, whatever old, little moniker you want to use there. Like, I think what we're also seeing is now the elevation of the things that made search firms great originally, right? Prior to the kind of data revolution. I think the point around change management is a really interesting one that probably deserves some more airtime here. But, the change management layer on top of all of this, like, complicates the realization of this technology and its power in the enterprise. So, but we've just seen a lot of, clients that are like, yeah, data looks, the AI looks at it this way, but they don't really know that we never wanted this person placed in, the first place on this particular search because they weren't a good fit to begin with. A bit of a nuance that I'm hanging on to there, but I do think we've seen almost a revision of what makes certain search firms great back to kind of the old way of doing
I
things.
love that, Ben.
so I have I wanted to double click onto the relationship and the instinct aspect. But before I do that, I love what you called out there in terms of navigating change, right, Ben? Can you give us some insight? What is it that you're seeing? Where are the obstacles?
So I've been the first company that ever took a look and a partner. You know who you are if you're on this webinar. If you're listening, thank you. But the first person that ever took a look at my company was an executive search. The first person, literally one of the first prospective customers I talked to before I'd written a single line of software, was a partner at a large Shrek search firm, and she like really helped guide the way for me in terms of understanding the industry. And I think one of the reasons you see a challenge in search, and I think this equates to a lot of similar types of partner-oriented business models where there isn't a verticalized board of directors, investors, the traditional corporate structure that you see, where short-term goals, for example, matter a lot in terms of returns to shareholders, 3 to 5 year hold periods on. And I know private equity has now found its way into executive search in ways that it hasn't before, but I would still argue this is kind of the old world, partnership model where we all kind of invest into the kitty and get paid out, based on dividends or profits that the firm creates. And I think the incentives for change in organizations like that starting at the top are low to begin with, right? There are people that are making gobs and gobs of money, and there's an element of search, I think, where the reason you don't see a ton of investment historically from Silicon Valley is because this is somewhat of a secluded, closed off industry to a degree because of the relationships that have driven it for so long. So, for us, when we think about new technology, it's not just the continuous kind of nature. What we see are companies that want to put change in place in waves or in cohorts constantly, like other businesses that we sell to, and we sell to corporates, we sell to executive search firms, but other corporates have kind of this like, and I think Mark, given that you guys at Findem do something similar, you don't just sell to search, like there's sort of this like rolling thing in the enterprise where they'll just adopt new technology and they look at software and third-party service providers as kind of like a substantial benefit to them achieving their own outcomes. But in search, I think it's a little bit different than that. I think they're kind of collapsing change management into specific cohorts and time periods. And I also think like the incentive for change sometimes is like, yeah, great. You can help us increase our profitability and turnaround time, but what about our OpEx? What about our cost profile? What about the return profile that our partners have lined up, for the business that we have today, right? I think it's important to remember that search is not like a publicly traded company, and they don't have the same motivations as the Fortune 500, like a big bank or a big tech company or a big healthcare organization that I'm sure, many folks on this call have either worked with or sold to as a service provider. So I think the motivations are different at the top. The organizational structure is quite different. And I think that peters down in technology adoption and the complexity of change management. The last thing I'll say is just on like a funny note. Someone asked me who was a customer, a few weeks ago. They were like, "Hey, so who are your biggest competitors?" And I told them, I said, we don't really have too many, but like change management is probably the biggest one in organizations enacting change. And I see one of the analysts, like one of the more junior people on the call, writing stuff down. They come off mute and they go, "Okay, yeah, just so I'm clear, what's this company Change Management? I never heard of them before. Who are these guys?" And I was like, no, like I mean change management as a process. So anyway, I'll pause there, but I thought that was a pretty funny like response to the idea of change management.
I think the change management point's great, Ben. We've certainly seen throughout the kind of evolution of our customers using AI, including Kaya, that kind of it starts typically small and it kind of catches fire for one use case, whether it's creating documents or uncovering all of the rich data that's sitting in Venice, whatever it happens to be, and kind of considered carefully, that kind of ends up being a prototype for how the firm actually ends up changing and thinks about how they're going to reshape themselves over the coming years. And I also really liked what you said about kind of it's a return to what it was in the past. That if you kind of assume that the clients of exec search firms ultimately have access to the same data and similar tools to the firm is, all that's left is the firm and the qualities of that firm, right? The kind of the process, the relationships, the rigor, in order to kind of get great outcomes as a result of it.
Yeah,
Mark, unsure if you wanted to. Oh, sorry, Alex. Go ahead. Yep.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, just one quick anecdote to add. I think under the change management umbrella, there's understandable fear right now, I think, in pretty much every profession, but certainly including executive search. And so when you think about sourcers, recruiters, partners with adopting tools, how is their role going to change in the future? Are the incentive structures set up so that if they do more searches per year, there's some upside to them personally? There's this term human factors engineering. In a previous company, they had human factors engineers on drilling rigs because if the psychology of team dynamics breaks down, like it could be fatal, So, but in any company, human factors, it's like designing products and systems so that you optimize delivery, also human well-being. And so I think the human element here, figuring out transparent models for here's how we're going to evolve, here's how you're going to up level. One example is the better you do precision targeting, the deeper you can go on assessment and fit. So I do think, the industry will evolve for the better of the actual delivery, but I think it's important to sort of figure out, what are the incentive structures when you're asking users to adopt a new workflow that, will maybe get better results, but what's in it for them as well.
Yeah, these are these are really interesting points. Ben, you kind of hit on a couple things. I think navigating change even early on is super interesting. I think you said something kind of early on about like setting the right information early, and it just kind of reminded me like no job was ever filled because the job spec was written correctly. Like decisions are always made later in the search. And so I think just, focusing on alignment, right? Having the consultative wherewithal to say, hey, like this is the process, this is what we went through. I think that's kind of that's a step that most consultants want to make. And so where technology comes in to free you up kind of enables that change, right? Like you're no longer spending all this time just uncovering every rock and saying, look, like I uncovered every rock. It's how are you actually, building alignment and making better decisions? I think that's like a really key thing. It's not just getting data, it's actually like making smarter decisions. And I think what we see with with corporates, and we're seeing a lot now with exec search firms, is like a willingness to allocate budget for experiments and really think about what does technology mean? How do we do it? Who's going to be responsible for it? So, Adrian, I think your comment of like start small, it applies. It's really true. I think that's usually the way that like teams are kind of finding the right pods to bring things in and then roll it out. But there's also like what we're seeing is like there's probably 2 or 3 different types of change management willingness. And I would say one is like top down full organization transformation. A chief digital officer, a chief transformation officer, or a managing partner is saying, we are committing to this. This is the future. Everyone get on board.
Right.
A second one is saying, well, we think we're going to do that, but we're going to have like a small pod. And so we'll kind of slowly roll it out. And a third is like, we're just going to find like people and kind of let them do it one at a time. And if it happens, it happens. And that's okay. Like, I don't think there's a wrong answer here, but I think there's like very different perspectives in how you usher change in. I think my advice, kind of seeing where it goes well and where it doesn't, is to be really intentional about what that change means for your organization.
Yeah, Adrian, I want to talk a little bit more about the relationship and the instinct side. The stuff that Ben said is really where executive search is going back to, and it throughout, like y'all have mentioned, access to data is commoditized. Access to AI, we'd say, is commoditized as well. But then you have the relationship and the instinct. How can you then start to utilize AI? And maybe you can even give a little case study of the search firm that helped you, or the search firms that helped you build this tool that you're providing today. But like how can AI really help amplify that voice, amplify that nuance, so that it's still so that the search firm is still quite differentiated, so that those instincts are not I'd say muddied or muted as a result of like this technology that's like inhaling all the data and like pushing out something that could be could feel commoditized.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is whichever of the companies we're talking about on the panel here, in all of those cases, what that should provide is richer, deeper information about the folks that you're dealing with in terms of relationships, both on the client and the candidate side. And so, if ultimately you consider that AI is going to end up where it feels like everyone has a department of people helping them, a department of virtual people helping them, it should mean that the people that adopt that technology the smartest and use it the best are going to be the ones that are going to be best informed, best able to be personalized, on point, to the point with the relationships they've got. And I think a little bit further on kind of Mark's point there, in terms of that kind of deliberate move as people are going through the evolution, I don't speak to almost anyone now that doesn't believe that this current wave of technology innovation isn't going to fundamentally change what AI is going to be. And I think the other thing that's worth saying, which kind of plays to that point of thinking about how to use the technology and evolving it, is AI 25% complete now? Probably not even that. And so as I was talking to someone who runs technology at a large search firm last week, and he's imploring his organization to kind of, treat this period in time as a phase effectively of experimentation, understanding how it's going to change and affect the organization, exactly to kind of serve the goal that you're talking about, Ash, in terms of how to then go and enhance what they want to do for the world, how to kind of be, more personal, have better information, be able to go and provide a better service as a result of it.
Yeah. Alex, where have you seen that work?
Yeah, well, I think Yeah, there's a couple of perspectives there. The human element, I think, will become actually amplified and more important in the next chapter. It's interesting in exec search firms, you have these amazing Sherlock Holmes type people that can just read someone in an assessment. To a certain degree, you can read over a Zoom like we're doing here, and then you meet someone in person, and you get this whole new dimension to understanding that person, their behaviors, their psychology. And I think that's where the human element could really be unlocked here. I don't see any short-term horizon where that's replaced. But I think the better you target, you can't go out and meet with 1,000 people, for a role. But if you hyper target well, you can do that and go much deeper. And then of course use deeper diligence tools like Ben as well. But I think there is a big opportunity there. But I think yeah, the next chapter will be definitely a lot of shifts in what the roles are along the process. I think tech can play a huge role in finding hidden candidates that might be missed right now because they don't have good networks, they haven't been assessed before. And one non-best practice might be over recycling of past candidates because you know who they are and have their cell phone and they'll respond. That's not actually always the best candidate pool for the client. But on the flip side, the ability to really bring that human element more to the front, I think is going to be a key part. So I don't see exec search going away at all. And the day where you click a button and a CEO walks in the door, I don't see it.
That's right, Alex. I mean, like the cost of making the mistake is just too great, right? It's definitely going to continue to exist and thrive as an industry. It's just going to change, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other thoughts? I wanted to lead into a couple of other things, but I'll give a moment. Ben, maybe you wanted to share an insight, or Mark, you wanted to share an insight.
I'm good for right now.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I see a question has popped up from Monica. In light of the discussion, change management typically a bigger problem in large corporates. Do you see quicker transition to tech by smaller boutique firms or by the larger group firms? We'll love your insight there.
I'll start in that I see no pattern whatsoever from a Kaya perspective. And in fact, I also see in the large firms we're talking to that some parts of the firm adopt it really quickly, others not so much. So like, top users of Kaya use Kaya more than like 500 times a month. Someone in the same role in the same firm uses it completely differently. Maybe it's age related. No, it's not. We don't see it's age related either. So at the moment, we can't see any pattern at the moment as to how it's being adopted. I think it is maybe it's more of a kind of a mindset in terms of willingness to kind of explore that kind of change. Maybe it's also kind of the phase of the company. But I'd be fascinated to hear the rest of your experiences as to whether you've seen any correlation that we might be missing.
Yeah, I think one thing I did a panel yesterday with executive search participants, and one interesting theme that came out was having a culture of, I guess, risk taking or experimentation. And the firms that have that culture, I think, are iterating the quickest here, adopting, evolving, improving. We have seen, some firms on the faster growth, for the Hunt, Scanlon, Rankin, or whatever, that have leaned into AI because obviously you're going to really get efficiency gains in placement. So we have seen that some of the fastest growing firms are the ones leaning into these kinds of tools, whether it's HelloSky or something else. So we're starting to see that trend. But I think to your point about, age or size of firm, we have seen some larger firms, but they really have that culture where they embrace the experimentation, get through the learning curve and get the productivity spikes. But interesting question.
Go ahead, Mark.
Oh no, Ben, looked like you were going to say something.
Oh, you got it, dude. You go for it. You got it.
So I agree with what's been said. I could also offer that I'm not sure that it has anything to do with size of firm or rate of growth. I actually think there's different examples, whether you're, a top 5 Shrek firm, and you're deploying AI. I think that's like one lean. We see a ton of small firms that are just building and experimenting. Like they're stitching together their own, right? And they're probably doing way more kind of cutting edge, innovative stuff just to try it. I think I kind of go back to, I think like you have to define what the outcome is that you're driving towards and try to understand what the best systematic way is to roll that out to gain adoption and acceptance. I don't think it's just like trying AI for the sake of trying. Like that's cool, but I'm not sure that that's like a fundamental business decision. I think that's a little bit different than what we see on the corporate side, where they do have experimental budgets and they're going out, they're testing, they'll sign up something for 12 months and they'll say, let's see, did we use it? Did we adopt it? They're pretty sophisticated in trying and experimenting, but there's a point of view on what is the outcome? What do you get out of that? And I think that's something I would encourage search firms to think about and have the confidence to do more and more frequently. I think experimentation is good. I don't think this is a like bet the farm kind of decision, but I think there should be like a really clear point of view of like, what do you get out of the purchase? What are you driving towards? What does it do for the firm? And the reason I say it is we're seeing firms struggle. Again, going back to like operational and financial discipline, there are firms that are making huge bets on completely swapping out research. And that's like a terrifying thing to admit. Some firms won't even like talk about it in public, but there's a reality that maybe there's a change there. I'm not saying I agree with that or not. I think maybe there might be a repurposing, but some firms are saying we're going to augment research, we're going to augment consultants. So I think you have to define what's happening in your organization, what your stance is, and what you're trying to get to, and build a really thoughtful plan about where tools and technologies support that.
I'm really curious. There's a question that's come in from an attendee about how AI will impact fee pressure. And specifically, this attendee has asked, as more and more mid-management firms embrace AI tools or internal HRIS add AI recruitment tools, what do you predict will be the impact on a fee pressure for executive search, which we already know, like that's an age-old pressure. But now with AI, how does that affect that?
Yeah, just one data point on that. I was at a Utah summit, Ashton, I think you know which one I'm talking about. And, the AESC had a survey on that specific question. And I think due to it being so high stakes, they're not really seeing, hey, we want 15% off as much as you better get us the best CFO that this company, So from their survey, it seemed like that wasn't yet an issue. Obviously over time that could change as clients get more of these tools and can chip away at the problem set. But so far, it was interesting to hear that one survey data point on that specific topic.
Yeah, and I would almost, simplify things a little bit and go back to first principles thinking. A lot of what search clients are paying for is brain power and connection. They're paying for intellectual horsepower when they engage with a search firm, right? And so, they're looking for the guidance on the next leader, them, but how that person fits in with the team. Maybe they're running psychographic analysis. Maybe they've got leadership profile, a strategy that they're running, that gives you the full readout, long-term forecast on how that executive, can lead your business based on appropriate comp. So I don't know if fee pressure is, really something that we're going to see too many search firms be subject to, because the fees, comparatively, I think it's going to vary by industry. I think you're going to see in like academia and nonprofits with a lot of the federal funding that, obviously universities are losing right now. That's coming down on search firms, that are on those sort of verticalized practice in the United States, at least. I think, so you will see in certain industries, I think, some compression on fee structure, but the reality is like software tools cost money too. I think it's really important to remember that like as much as AI has a cost savings associated with it, this stuff ain't free, like there's still SaaS costs that's embedded within it. There's still a per candidate cost that, while not as significant, I don't think the incentive is for search firms right now to say, hey, we're going to give you the blue light special, on this search, to win you over. Now, could there be an emerging competitor that comes into the market and says, hey, we're going to blend the best of AI? And we've seen some, firms do that, and I think we all know who, some of those are that have been successful, and have been acquired, have been, substantial investments from the venture capital and private equity community to do just that. But I think at the end of the day, it's a market segmentation question, and there's going to be certain verticals that, yes, will be affected. Fee pressure will come down, but I don't know if it will be because of AI and technology as much as the other vast majority of complexity and different elements that exist in the verticals that they serve. I think that's probably the bigger pressure on fee pressure, right? The bigger.
Can I add a hot take here from Monica Borges? She said fees could actually go up if you argue that your process is better because of tools in addition to your human process versus a purely human process or a purely AI process that could inevitably mess something up, right? So Mark, would love your insight there.
I'll make it quick. I mean, this is great. It looks like you got some more questions coming in, but
Yeah.
look, I don't know that I honestly don't know how the argument plays out if AI can actually increase fees or not. I think there's probably a debate at seniority uh, and regional pressures or whatever. But the argument I would probably feel pretty comfortable making is that if your quality of service goes up, you can charge a premium. And I think that's been something that's been true for a long time. The point, again, I go back to the point of all of this is greater insights and better outcomes. So if you can deliver that, if you figure out how to package that and scale that, that is a critical component for search firms. If you're a small firm and you're competing with big firms, information is important. If you're a big firm and you're getting tons of business from customers that are super savvy and have incredibly high expectations, then you have to normalize that level of delivery. I don't think that buyers feel that it's great to have very lumpy delivery across firms that are doing different things with different partners. And we're hearing that their customers are saying we'll pull revenue. We will go somewhere where we can get better, more consistent outcomes. So I think the focus on quality is really important there to maintain or increase pricing.
Mm. I know that there are a couple more questions that are coming in. Thank you for that. I want to get into the weeds a little bit, and I want to talk about signals because there on a couple of occasions we've y'all have shared ideas around making sure that you don't miss that candidate, especially if like the organization that you're serving happens to find that individual. Alex, you gave the scenario of like, hey, here are like the only 9 people that you should be considering. And then that organization's leader said, well, here's the 10th. And so you don't want to be that firm. And so, we're talking about human instinct, we're talking about relationship, but can you help me with maybe some of the signals, some of the data that can help surface that information that that traditionally may have been missed if AI wasn't being utilized?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think one example is as you drill down on your short list, you need in-market candidates, right? So one approach to that is try to get through to someone's cell or email, ask them, hey, are you in market? And here's a role. But if you could target in-market candidates using signals, to your point, then you don't waste your time on a whole bunch of screens. It's really hard to get through to someone, and you do all that work to only find out not interested. So I think there's a lot of data out there now. It gets into sort of behavioral, but there's company signals, there's individual signals. So, we do a recruitability score. I think LinkedIn Recruiter has it open to work. Any executive that tags that, I don't think is going to be around long at their role. So I don't think any A+ executive is going to go on LinkedIn and tag that because their PE investor probably wouldn't be too thrilled to know that they're open to, transfer. So I think, really looking at private scoring of that is certainly a big unlock because again, it's hard to get through to people and it's a bad candidate experience if you finally do and they're like, totally not available. So I think the big opportunity on that specific use case.
I think generally, as the sourcing tools become more sophisticated, we've kind of gone from the bad old days of like Boolean database style search to, I know a bunch of us in this call kind of a definitely kind of AI enabled search. Then you can cast the net wider and be more selective with who ends up on the list. So is the result ever going to be eliminated of the here's 9, what about the 10th? No. And I think that's always going to be the case. That I think, again, my experience of a client of an exec search firm, having spoken to others, the point isn't to consider everybody. The point is to consider enough to get one of the best candidates in the world to end up joining your company at the end of it. And of course, it helps if you can be more intelligent in terms of being able to source the right candidates in the right way from more better, richer data sources than just LinkedIn, right? Which everyone can get to LinkedIn.
Yeah, I want to off the back of that speak about like non-obvious candidates. Dare I say diverse, right? Like Mark, can you help share some insight there? Because Alex, you were talking about signals, right? And this is based on what's happening in the organization, some of the movements that you've seen with executives themselves. But like, how do we start to spot the, some talent that may not necessarily be in the space that that the hiring organization may be in, or perhaps may not necessarily be in the function that the hiring organization may be like looking to bring some executive talent into. So Mark, would love some insight there, because I know y'all are doing some pretty cool stuff in that area.
Yeah, appreciate that. I mean, I think that's probably a topic worth at least an hour of conversation. I'll try to be brief, but
So
I
not
mean,
now,
look, I
Ash, I
think
get it.
I think when you're reliant on like self-declared data, you miss a lot. Uh, we run a great program that we call an innovation accelerator, and so we did this specifically at the board level, looking at how different forms of research and research tools compare. So your standard existing database, like your existing methods of Google, how does generative AI? So pick your provider, ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, whatever you want, and then how does purpose-built AI perform? Uh, and we've tested this, we've published on this, and I think one of the benefits is you can show how purpose-built AI outperforms generic models and traditional sources of data. It provides more diverse candidate slates faster with better levels of information. And I think that's a huge win, because um, it enables you to uncover the non-obvious candidates and the adjacent candidates and things that kind of extend thinking. And I think that's part of the value of search, is to say, not can I just find what's on that job spec, but we've looked at the market, we have ideas, like let's unpack this, like let's really be consultative and intentional about what we're going to look at, move into different markets, let's figure out how we qualify them, how we think about bringing them in. So there's like a series of things that can come, I think, by having the ability to unearth a broader and better slate of candidates. So we're very bullish on that.
I'm mindful we just have a couple of minutes left here. There was there was a question that came from an attendee, a really thoughtful one, around search firms. Are search firms looking to merge with AI companies to add that capability to their offerings, or just leveraging current market offerings? In particular, the context here, as a small boutique firm, we're leveraging it to help with capacity building to serve the market. What are some insights there? Alex, I know you did some interesting work with another search firm that's like, pull this as part of their offering, right? So like what insight can you offer there?
Yeah, I mean, search firms want to find a win-win where they can retain some proprietary advantage. And so I think one of the things we're seeing is we embrace firms, either building on top of us or developing proprietary methods above and beyond the AI generated insights. I think that is a huge opportunity. We do have some investors that happen to be exec search firms that wanted some skin in the game, but in general, I think for firms, investing or acquiring is one path, but adopting and then building out proprietary, advantage in their delivery model is the other path to get, competitive advantage. So yeah, I've seen a couple perspectives there.
I think that's crazy. I mean, like there is like a graveyard of services companies from every industry that have gone, it can't be that hard, we'll go and build this product ourselves. And I think there is a vanishingly small number of examples where that has gone well. And there is an enormous quantity of abandoned projects. It's just a completely different discipline. It's not easier, it's not harder, it's just different. It's a different organizational construct. So I think there's no shortage of technology out there, right? It's not that there's a shortage of technology. It's how it's adopted, how it's used, and working closely in partnership with whoever you're working with to make sure that it's actually kind of meeting a real need. There you go. You asked for the all-in style, Ash, where we started disagreeing with each other. It might be the end, but I've managed to get started.
Well, I'm mindful we've got 5 minutes left. I'll let whoever wants to share some insight there, some detail, feel free to do so.
and then we can just wrap it up. And by the way, to the attendees, thank you so much for bringing the questions that you have. This has been recorded. We'll share it afterwards. I know that there was a question around AI helping with business development, and can the panelists share how they're integrating with our technologies. I promise you that if you reach out to them on LinkedIn, they will give you the time of day to talk you through some of that. So anyway, going back to the question around maintaining your I'd say your secret sauce, and utilizing incorporating AI into that. Like what are some additional insights that you may have? I saw, Mark, you were kind of like nodding, and maybe you want to share some thoughts too.
Oh, I mean, I just think there's been some great comments here by the panelists. So I'm kind of in agreement. I think we're all seeing very similar things, but yeah, look, I think if you can think about the areas in which your service can improve as a result of adopting the right technologies, there's probably a couple areas, right? So Ashton, you just mentioned like sales and business development. I think there's some really interesting applications beyond just like simple pitch deck building, where you could actually do more to create greater differentiation. And that's not just like an interesting thought. I think it's what the buyer's buyer wants, right? They're looking for different things other than just like how many offices and how many partners. Like that's always been everyone's pitch. And so, Adrian, I'll try to like step up my spiciness level here, just to keep pace with you. But I think truthfully, like that's something that we heard in the industry for a long time. So how can you differentiate there? How do you differentiate during execution? And then what can you do to honestly like even create additional lines of revenue for your business? I think we're really laser focused on like research and sourcing as kind of like an immediate pain point. I think what we're seeing is there's a lot of other opportunities to extend and build beyond. And so the amount of time that we're thinking about how do we solve the immediate pain point is great, but I think there's a lot of room for conversation to have additional conversation around what does talent intelligence mean in executive search? How do we extend and move beyond there? What are things that we can be doing to further improve the service that we deliver? Those are some of the really interesting trends that I love kind of thinking and talking about.
Yeah, and I would just add, I think this has been first a great conversation, Ashton. So thanks for you and the Bullhorn team for setting this up. It's been great, really enjoyable. And what I would say is sort of aligned with what the other panelists have said so far. But this technology is not designed to replace. This is to bring you to the precipice of action faster, right? To get you to a position where faster and more effectively you can do the things you've already been doing and expand upon the success you've already had, right? I think that's a really important piece here. I talk a lot in like, when the lathe came out and it replaced sandpaper and hand sanding, it didn't make everybody a woodworker instantly, right? Those people that were equipped, they did it better, they did it faster, they did it cheaper, and they could get more projects out quickly and build bigger businesses. So I think the question for the audience is how do we, one, set our strategy? Is it on business development? Is it on reducing the cost of service delivery? Is it in adding advisory services on top of search so that we can add more modular upsell and increase average revenue per account? And then from there, once you set those targets and goals, like many things, begin thinking about the technology that can help you get there, the process changes that can help you get there. And I would agree with Adrian. Buy it, don't build it. I'm incentivized to say that, but buy it, don't build it.
And there's a thought that I'd love to share from Gary over at Boyden, who's a joy to work with. He shares this idea of picking your poison. In terms of how firms are selecting to invest the capacity that surfaces from improved quality, value, and velocity is really up to the firm. Levers can include fee strategies, search profitability, due to lower costs and depth of assessment. So I think there's definitely an opportunity there for us to continue to talk about this. As we come for a landing, again, everybody, thank you for coming out. I just want to ask each one of y'all, in one word or one phrase, what do you think will define the next era of executive search? We'll start with Alex, putting you on the spot first.
I think the one holy grail is fit. And so I think going deeper into some data-driven insights, but some very human insights on, mapping the full candidate pool, but going much deeper Sherlock Holmes style on fit. So I'm excited to see where that takes us in terms of better, better outcomes on innovation.
Excellent. Ben?
Can I do 3 words, like a phrase? Can I do a phrase?
Come on, bring it. Yeah.
I'm going to say one step ahead. I think that's what search firms can do over the next few years to stay competitive. I think you'll see more consolidation if, again, the biggest, I think, challenge here is that level of parity with corporates with access to technology. That's the thing I'll go back to. So I'll go phrase.
Love that. Yeah. Love that. Adrian?
One word, richer.
Richer.
I think in all senses of the word, I hope, but richer in terms of kind of deeper. I think that should hopefully define the next phase.
Depth, fit, and one step ahead. Mark?
Man, I'm too wordy for this game. I'm a talker, so sorry guys. I know you want to wrap. Look, I'll just say, like, I think be innovative, be creative, expand the thinking and the horizon. There's so much that can be done. Like, don't be confined by tech innovation and what's been done in the past 20 years. Like, take a new principle. Think about what can be done over the next 5, because I think we're going to see far more innovation that creates differentiation that will like impact a business in ways that we haven't done before. So I would be excited to embrace the future.
Oh yeah, I love that. Well, everyone, thank you so much. Alex Bates from Hello Sky, Ben over from Fama.io, Adrian from Kaya, and Mark Jacobson from Findem. If you haven't connected on LinkedIn, connect with them. Feel free to connect with me as well. Thank you for joining this conversation. Panelists, thank you so much for a very rich conversation with a lot of depth, a lot of insight. Everybody attending, I hope you gained some value from this. And Jocelyn and our marketing team here, thank you so much for putting this on. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll be speaking soon. Thank you all.
Thanks all.
Thanks, Ash.
Cheers.
Thanks.